Welcome, everybody. This is the Sky Media Ventures podcast. I'm the founder, Nathaniel Carrasco. Guys, I am so excited. We have our first guest speaker, guest person on the show today. One of my great past managers who also became like a mentor type figure when I got my first job out of college. He needs no introduction, but to give him a quick introduction, he was one of the sharpest people at our previous company, helped generate multi-million dollars of revenue for that company. He is a leader. He is a fantastic manager, and his name is Zachary Shivers. Welcome to the show, Zach.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for the introduction. It's humbling to hear. So, no, I really do appreciate being on here, and especially first guest. That's, hopefully I leave big shoes to fill when leaving.
Yeah. Well, Zach, one thing that here at Sky Media Ventures, one thing that we look out for is we look for people who have talents in places where maybe people think it's hard to be talented in that area, or maybe they want to develop a skill in that area and they just don't know where to start. And the one skill that you taught me several years ago is I remember getting a phone job. At a company, getting a phone job where we were doing nurse staffing. And it was so daunting for me personally. I've never done this before. And then I get put to this company, and then I meet someone like you. And all the managers, they're saying, hey, we have 30 sales reps, but there's 2 sales reps that you really want to emulate. You got this guy, and then you got Zach Shivers. And I remember you being one of those people. So we look up to people who can get results, in whatever endeavor they decide to choose. So that's really amazing, Zach.
Yeah, no, and an important thing that you bring up that a lot of people don't really recognize is that no matter if you're day 1 in sales or year 20, everybody started in that exact same position that when you walked into the door. And there's, nobody really walks into a job and day 1 starts absolutely dominating whatever market, especially if it's a brand new market like we were in healthcare. It's vast, it's aggressive, it has its ups and downs. And the biggest thing that when every single new hire that came in is I started as a new hire. I started as somebody that only knew really nurses and doctors existed. I didn't even know like breakdowns. I didn't even know like differences of hospitals, primary care clinics, outpatient.
Critical access, long-term care.
Exactly. The trauma levels, like all of that was new to me. So when entering the job and, being able to get to that point, it was essentially you had to be a sponge for not only the market space, but also the people around you. So whether they were just hired, whether they were a veteran, I was always sitting there at my desk saying, I really like the way that person said that. Maybe I can throw my own twist, be unique, be different, and, be successful while also having that same sort of, whether it be demeanor, tonality, inflections, pitch, all that put into one really shaped in regards to how I personally evolved and stepped into sort of my own light and created my own sort of, style of how I would speak, conduct business, and what I use today.
And you know what, Zach? I'm proud to say there's probably about 3 or 4 different sales reps who I've created my own style from. And I think after sitting with you for by your desk for 8 months, I think a part of my sales style is you. So thank you for learning all those skills.
No, absolutely, and I appreciate it. And that's every not only managers but employees' dream is, and person's dream is to, have a little bit of them live on in somebody else. And, again, I'm glad that my goal was met when, training you is, hey, if I can just shed a little light on some things and, have a little bit of the good habits that I brought to the table, not the bad, but, it definitely, is something that hearing it is definitely, more impactful than, just hoping for. So.
Sure. Zach, I want to get into it. How did you even begin in sales? Like I know you were 21 when you started at the company we worked at. how did you get into that position? Did you know that you were going to get a job that was going to be a sales job, or was there someone that you grew up with that was already a good salesperson? Just how did you find yourself? How did we come in contact with each other?
So sales was sort of a 50-50 in regards to myself and my career path. Initially, so I was raised by a mother and father that started their own real estate company in Jupiter 27 years ago. And I was raised around that real estate. They started a construction company 5 years after that. So I was raised in real estate construction, that sort of sales background, the whole bidding, quoting, listing appointments, all of that, open houses. And it essentially, when entering college, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to sort of take the sales approach as much as I'm going to take the finance approach, because numbers was a big thing for me. And so when going through college, I started realizing all the finance jobs that I was sort of interested in, and like data analytics, I was really like a people person. And I was like, am I going to be happy sitting behind a desk doing reports and, analyzing data all day? Or am I going to be more happy building connections, building relationships, and basically seeing, hey, if you're good at relationships, if you're good at connecting with people, and if you're an honest, down to earth individual, you're going to be able to see the success with that in sales. So I was like, I'm going to get into that sort of test on myself to see how it was. So
I think you passed.
So I will pass when I will classify myself as passing when I retire and I'm on a beach somewhere, kicking my feet up, and have that old lawn chair sitting there. But I entered Barton during COVID, towards the back end of COVID.
Okay.
And essentially, what happened was I applied for many jobs, and the big thing was, what is a company that I can sort of get in and grow? So I interviewed with Barton, and it was actually quite funny because during that time that I interviewed, a big thing was salary with them, and it was definitely a strenuous topic. And so it was actually, my hiring class was the first class that they did a company-wide bump. So it did help in the initial, because in any sales role, you're not going to hit the ground, making sales your first hour, your first minute, sometimes first week, sometimes first month, sometimes first 6 months. So I had to evaluate sort of my financial situation and how sort of long I could live off that, while also saying, this is not a guarantee. I need to start doing something with it. So I joined Barton September, I want to say 2019, and essentially then I wanted to get into healthcare because I felt like it was an interesting topic, but also a topic that is very controversial. There's many people that think healthcare are crooks, and there's many people that think that healthcare is the greatest thing known to mankind. So I wanted my own opinion of that. So I entered into that market space there. Day one, turns out, which I had no idea while applying to the job, that they had an office in Boston, and I was actually employee number one of their in their West Palm Beach office. And so it was myself, John Bryant, Ashley Hamilton, and Megan Carter that essentially joined us four. Megan and I were account executives. John and Ashley were recruiters. Mm-hmm. And essentially I took the leap and said, you know what? I'm entering an office space that's massive. It could house 50 people. There's 4 people, 6 people total, including my 2 bosses. And I was like, let's sort of build this thing and see where it goes. So just sort of jumped in with that mentality that I mentioned at the beginning of, I wanted to be a sponge, soak up everything that I can, and see how well I can really do.
And that's an amazing story. And then we've seen the growth, and Barton is still growing too. So that's amazing. Zach, let's say somebody is new at sales, day one at sales. They've had 0 sales experience before. What are some factors that they can control and some factors that they can't control? And knowing what you know now, if you had to start from the ground, level 1, ground 0, what advice would you give?
I would say the factor that you can't control, and I'm going to turn to the audience when I say this one, you are going to get rejected. It doesn't matter what sales role that you're in, you are going to get rejected. Sometimes it's going to be a subtle, I'm not interested. And then sometimes it's going to be something massive, like, somebody blowing up that you caught them on the wrong time, the wrong day, the wrong situation.
Sure.
So you're never going to be able to control that rejection. Now, there are ways in which, as you go down the line, that you can sort of, a soft rejection can turn into a succession later on. However, you're always going to be faced with that. So that was the big thing that I had to learn quickly, was that, and honestly to you, and I will never forget this instance, 2 weeks into the job, you start on the phones. So
You're talking about me personally?
No, me.
Oh, okay,
me.
okay, gotcha.
Just in the job in general. 2 weeks in, you start on the phones, and basically after that first orientation week. And so I enter second week, and it's like I had a great conversation with a client, and I'm thinking, this is easy. Like, this is something that, is going to be absolutely fantastic. And then I entered my third week, and I will never forget that I cold called a facility in Texas, and I'm just explaining to them this situation, current market space, sort of, how their staffing is going. And the gentleman on the other end of the line, he was a medical director. He proceeded to, for the next 10 to 15 minutes, do nothing but, like, not curse me out, but like the industry out, like really like get very, emotional in the conversation. It basically, when I say conversation, it was a one way. He was just the whole time talking to me, and he was going into, like, I would like to talk to your managers just about the cruelty of this industry. However, I know they're not going to listen and they're not going to care and all this. And so after that 10 to 15 minute sort of rant that he went on, I respectfully ended the call, was very professional throughout it. And I basically took 10 minutes, and I was like, wow, like that, everything rushed in at that moment. And it was something that I was like, I have two options. I can either weigh on that negative conversation, or I can weigh on the great conversation that I had last week of a potential client that may turn into a client, that may turn into a long-term relationship and friend. And that was something that hit me hard at the beginning, and something that I took throughout my career. And hey, I've had many of those conversations since. That was just the first, most impactful, most memorable, because that was something that sort of set the pace of the horse. Now, things you can't control, attitude's one of them. I always said, go into the office every single day with a smile on your face. A very big mentor of mine was Lena Galato. She was the Barton Healthcare Staffing, I believe, president, and then the Barton Associates VP. And she was one of those individuals that third weekend to the job and third weekend to the branch opening, she walks in and she's like, when you're talking on the phone, smile. And I was like,
Yeah, I agree with that one.
okay, like that's kind of odd, but whatever. And so she's like, it reflects your tonality, it reflects your emotion, and it's something that can actually be heard over the phone.
Heard and felt, they could feel and hear, like you said, of you smiling over the phone, even if you're 1,000 miles away.
Exactly. And it just increases your personality. It basically as well tricks your mind into, if you're having a bad day, if you go into the office, something happened that previous night, and you're still a little razzled because of it, it really tricks your whole demeanor into being like, I want to be here, I want to do this, and I want to succeed. And clients felt it over the phone, and it was something that, that's something that you can easily control, is going to be easily impactful, and you're going to be able to see results a lot quicker.
Sure. And, and Zach, you brought a good point just a moment ago. You talked about building relationships. I remember any time that I was dealing with an account, and I'm like, hey, Zach, look at my book of business, my prospect, my pipeline of success. What do I need to do to move forward with these accounts? You always gave me the same answer, dude. It was, Nate, how is your relationship with that individual? Because that relationship with that individual will push a business contract forward. And that's the one thing that I really learned from you, was that people like to do business with people they like and people they have good relationships with, versus just a transactional interaction. Hi, this is Nate with XYZ company. Are you ready to move forward or not? Versus all the relationship building you would give them and you would demonstrate I mean, guys, I would hear this guy talk to his clients about for 15 minutes about how he drove to work, stopped at the gas station, tripped over a rock, met a girl selling Girl Scout cookies, and now he's telling this entire story to the client. And I'm thinking like, wow, he must have had this story prepared for weeks. But really, you were really good at building a relationship with your clients, and then telling them talking to them in a storytelling kind of way about your life. I mean, do you remember doing stuff like that?
Oh, absolutely. And it was one of those things that at the end of the day, people are people. Doesn't matter if you're a part of the biggest organization known to mankind, doesn't matter if you're part of the smallest. Everybody's a person.
Sure.
And so when going into these relationships and conversations, you're totally right. My saying was always people do business with people that they like, plain and simple. And it was something that you had to take a step back and really again, I don't want to get into specifics for, privacy purposes with some of the clients that I worked with.
Sure.
However, I was an exclusive vendor for one of the largest health systems in the United States. That vendor or that health system, they actually were a $0 billable account for the company when I entered. And I took 6 to 8 months to basically just have conversations, see where they're at, get with the feel, see what they like, see what they don't like. And not only just for business, I did it because at the end of the day, I really was interested in what they had to say and I cared. And that was something that my longest standing client, it was Barton's biggest client. And it was a situation that it produced probably 60% of my revenue was, an individual that I talked every single day with for a year. Before they were like, Zach, you're doing a great job. We could do like every other. So we had a standing call Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And it was
without them giving you the business.
Without.
Wow. It takes so much discipline for a sales rep to just constantly, week after week, have a conversation with a person who it looks like is just a long shot, dude, before they've given you the business. So how long did you build that relationship with that person before they decided to actually do business?
I would say it was probably 6 to 8 months of just relationship building. And really at the end of the day, like as sales reps, we push a product on people, and what we were talking about before the show, like good to great. And I know that throughout this show, we'll talk a lot about, getting good to great, because if, there's 972,000 aspects of it. But one of the ones was believing in your product, but also seeing, is this person on the other end of the line, other end of the table, whatever situation that you're in, are they going to, is it a true benefit for them? If it's not going to be a benefit for them, then why push to sell?
Sure.
And so that was my biggest thing. What took me from good to great was analyzing and saying, hey, I have a product. I have a service. Will it benefit you in the long run? Is it going to benefit you now? I don't know, because I don't know anything about you. Is it going to benefit you in 3 months? Possibly. But can I see it benefiting you next year, the year after that, for years to come? Absolutely. Sure. And if all those things checked off the boxes, even if they were to tell me absolutely not, I didn't have a contract signed with them, I didn't have any, financial contractual obligations with them. It was just a situation that was like, hey, I'm here. I'm more interested in the interim and future of learning more about you and building a relationship and friendship. I know you have your current people, and I get that, but I want to focus on, if those people fall through, okay, one chance, one opportunity. It's not really, a big situation, depending on if you, constantly outsource 60% of your opportunities to somebody, 30% to another, and 10% to me. That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly, acceptable. And again, I'm just going to be here to support. And then at that point, once you get that foot in the door, then you focus on the business side more and expanding that and saying, hey, I appreciate the 10%. Let's try 15%. Let's try 20. Then you get up to 90. Then you get up to 100. And then you're like, okay, I took those steps to prove myself on the way, and I have. So that's the big thing in any sort of sales industry is it's not even in sales industries, but it's also in business. The two most expensive things for business are new customers and new employees.
That was just a turnover. Yeah, yeah.
Those two big things. And so when looking at those two big things from a just business operation side of things, it's like if you put it on the sales side, the most expensive thing and the biggest risk to any company is taking on a new sales rep or taking on a new service or a new, sales item that you're offering. So being able to recognize that and start small and be like, hey, biggest thing's on trust right now. Let's build up that trust. Then we can get to other things.
Sure, sure. Zach, you said something very brilliant back in the day. You said, Nate, work hard your first 6 months, grind your first 6 months, and it's going to set up your next 2.5, 3 years. Can you explain a little bit on how that philosophy helped you and just dive a little bit deeper in what that means to work hard for 6 months to be set up for your next several years?
So I always told people it was not only that, but also even let's say you're a year in and you're starting with a new account, have that sort of 6-month mentality with them. And it was a situation that when anybody's new in sales, their book of business is 0. If you get past the book of business, it's either underdeveloped or, a lot of, tumbleweeds throughout there. So, basically go into the job with the aspect of the first 6 months are crucial because of A, learning, but B, relationships. And that was something that I always expressed to my new hires and my team is that if you work the hardest that you've ever worked for the first 6 months, it's going to really identify 3 things. The first is going to be how you like the job. Most important. I would rather have an employee turn over in 6 months if they're going to turn over anyway than an employee basically for 2 years, not really do much. And, eventually you spend all this time, energy, and money towards them. And then they are already checked out mentally for the, 2 years that they've been there.
Sure.
So the first one's trying to see, do you like the job? The second one is, are you teachable? Is that going to be something are you going to be a sponge that soaks up all this information? Are you going to be somebody that literally is sitting there saying, hey, for the first 6 months, I'm putting the pedal to the metal and I'm going to basically learn everything that I can, apply everything that I am able to, and see how much sort of success I can gauge within there. And then the third and final one is it goes to work ethic. At the end of the day, if I've gone up to employees and I'm like giving them the same speech, and they turn to me in a month in, they're showing up 30 minutes late. They're leaving 30 minutes early. They're not really making any calls, any attempts, any effort to try to get into the market space.
Yeah, they spent 8 hours doing 30 calls.
Exactly.
And have 0 book of business.
Exactly.
It'd be different if they had a book business,
And it's a disservice to them because at the end of the day, I don't want you, and I didn't want you to go into a company and first off, over-promising and under-delivering is a big thing of mine. So I didn't want to over-promise you the world and then sit there and watch you, and then 6 months from now, you feel like I under-delivered as a manager, as a mentor, as a leader. And that was something that I vowed to my clients, I vowed to my coworkers, my employees, to the company itself. And, that first 6 months really shows somebody, hey, are they going to be able to do this long term? And if they're quitting or if I can see defeat or, whatever it may be a month in, I don't have that as a write-off, but I have that as a, hey, like, why do you feel defeated? Like, why are you showing up 30 minutes late and coming and leaving 30 minutes early? Like, what's that situation? And if it's discouragement, that's easy to train. That's easy to, try to work through. If it's this job isn't for me, then guess what? Not every job's for every single individual. So you just respect it. You wish them the best, and you sadly move on. And that was something that, as well as from a manager aspect, learn. And that was a big thing that I made sure every single employee under my tutelage, I brought into a conference room, and I was basically like, hey, I respect your decision. I'm not going to fight it because at the end of the day, we're all doing what's best for each other.
You did that with me a lot.
1,000%.
Either with the group or like personally. Like I can remember a lot of times sitting face to face with Zach Shivers, and then we're literally talking about the future and about the book of business and how we can go from point A to point B in a more efficient way, in a better way. What did we learn from the last couple months? What did we learn from these accounts? What new areas or territories can we target, and things like that. So everything you're saying, I remember being with you.
And it's pivotal because, you don't want burnout and you don't want resentment. And at the end of the day, like when I interview people, I see something in them, and to develop that's basically on them. And I can't do that for you. So it turns into something that is, just, a flower. Hey, is it going to blossom in the direction that you want it to, or is it going to blossom in a different direction? And if it does, you just respect it, and, you really can't do much after that.
Sure. Zach, you made millions of dollars for the company we worked at. When did you realize that was there like a good to great mental shift in your mind, or was it gradual, or I don't know, like was there a point where you realized, wow, I have a knack for this, and let me keep developing this gift I have?
So started in I think I said 2019, but no, 2021. Started in 2021.
Okay.
My first fiscal year in the company was 2022 because I started in September. 2022, I was fourth in the company in sales. 2023, I was second in the company in sales, and basically beat myself up over it due to the fact that it was so drastically close that the next week I would have surpassed the number one individual. And so even then, being number two, I was like, but I'm not number one. At the end of the day, like, sure. I'm sorry, but we remember Super Bowl winners. We don't, tend to remember as long Super Bowl losers, unless of course you're a massive fan.
Sure.
So that was the situation that entering 2024, I'm like, I'm gonna do this. And so it wasn't until probably, if I had to say, June of 2024 when I basically secured the number one spot for the year.
Fantastic.
And that's when I was like, okay, now I can classify myself as an expert in the industry. Now I can classify myself as the top dog. Now I can classify myself as, I went from good to great. And so it took 2 years. And even with success prior to. And that was something that me personally, I was always raised around is, hey, you walk in, and I did it the first day. The first day I walked in, first question I asked was, who's the top sales guy? And they were like, this guy has the highest numbers. And I'm like, great, that's who I have to beat. And that was, of course, the individual that beat me by a week in 2023. But that was the situation that I was like, okay, they're going to set the pace. I'm going to go and get that spot. When I get that spot, I have to set a new pace because, that pace that they were at wasn't, it was, I just had to, to surpass them, I had to be at a different pace. And to keep going on and not have anybody pass me, I had to keep going at that pace.
Zach, who taught you how to have that winner mentality? That mentality, is it innate, or did someone is this nurture where you were raised to have that mentality of, if I'm going to join this company, I want to be the number one top dog? Is this just something that's in your genetics, or did you have a parent or maybe a mentor? How did you develop that mentality before even starting day one at Barton?
Nurture, 1,000%, and it was my parents. At 10 years old, I basically did my first ever verbal contract with my father.
At 10 years old.
At 10 years old.
Already doing business. Not even 11, but you're 10. And you're doing a verbal contract with your father.
Exactly. Essentially, what happened was I played baseball my whole life. And at 10 years old, is really that turning point in sort of baseball that you start getting towards travel ball, bigger fields, the whole deal. So I wasn't very good. I was that kid that you stuck in right field for 2 innings, prayed that nobody hit him the ball, and then would move on. And so I come home and after a game, and I'm just sobbing in my room. And my father walks in, and he's like, "Why are you upset?" And I'm like, "Because I suck." I'm like, "I'm awful." I'm like, "This is brutal. Like, I love the game, but I'm just not good." And so him and I made an arrangement right then and there, and he was like, "I'll make a deal with you. If you promise me to listen to what I say, train the way that your trainers and, the people that I'll have enter your life tell you to, and you really stick with it, I'll find those people to help you train. I'll open up that checkbook for lessons. I will, be that supporter in the background." And
Almost like incentivized you.
exactly. And so it was something that I agreed, and I can't tell you the amount of times I was kicking and screaming of, I don't want to go to practice, or I don't want to go work out, or I don't want to go on a run, whatever it may be. And it was funny because my father was like the iron fist, and my mother was the biggest supporter that anybody could ask for. And not only to me, but also with all this attention, all this focus, all this drive. Like, I have a sister that's 2 years younger. She's actually getting married Thursday.
Congratulations to your sister.
Thank you. She actually gave me the honor of ordaining them. So I, am getting ready for that.
Sure.
However, my mother really stepped in at the role of, I'm going to emotionally support Zach, while my father physically pushes him to his limit. And I'm also going to be the one to support my sister during all this because of that sort of situation of Zach's at baseball every single day with dad. We need to, family's very important to myself, my family. We're very family oriented. So basically, my father and I had that verbal contract. My mother and I had that emotional contract. And
emotional contract. First time hearing that term. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Absolutely. And, it basically, my father's physical contract and verbal contract turned null and void and more emotional when college came because I held up my end of the deal. I got my Division I offer, and I went off to play Division I baseball. So
Amazing.
Having those two role models in my life really shaped the way that I entered into business and sales due to the fact that they're some of the most, I want to say, so ruthless does not have a negative connotation in my vocabulary because you can be deceitful and ruthless, or you can just be motivated and ruthless.
Sure.
And they were some of the most motivated and ruthless individuals I've ever seen because they have no hours that they work throughout the day.
Sure.
When they wake up, they're on the clock.
They're entrepreneurs.
Oh, yeah. When they go to sleep, they're on the clock. And it was one of those situations that...
When they go into sleep, they're on the clock.
They still are. Yeah, absolutely. And that was sort of the mentality that I took as well in regards to, hey, like, I want to live up to that expectation. I want to live up to that name. And, that's sort of what is motivating me, and then led to the motivation within Barton, within my current career path, with everything.
Oh man, that's amazing. That's amazing. My parents were also, they were salespeople, my mom and dad. My dad sold on informing the customer, so the customer felt well informed. So he had a very intelligent way of doing sales. My mother, she sold on emotions and personality. So if my mom and dad were here, you can only guess which one got more sales. Definitely probably my mom. But I remember there were times where a customer would walk in the door, and we all three of us worked at a furniture store. We're also very family oriented. All three of us worked at a furniture store. I would deliver the furniture. My parents would sell the furniture. I remember a lady walking in one time, walks in, sees my mother, puts her hands in the air and goes, "I am not going to spend a dime. I'm just here looking." Well, my mom, talks to her for an hour, maybe 2 hours. She ends up leaving that place, dude, with $11,000 in debt, on financing on some furniture. So I think anybody who has parents, they should be very, very grateful for their parents raising them and instilling some of those values. And also, when you mention being ruthless and having a positive connotation, first thing that came to mind, and I don't know if you've seen this on Netflix. I think you'd like it. There's a show called Vince McMahon, and is the guy who created the WWE.
Okay.
And there's one specific scene before John Cena, he's a big wrestler, before he becomes a champion, Vince is looking for the next superstar. And he's saying, I need someone with ruthless aggression, but like having that ruthless motivation, to keep on moving forward, even if the people say no, even if they screw you, you've called me too many times. We need those people to go, hey, yes, we're getting hurt, but we're not going to stop. Yes, we're going to fall. And if we fall down, we'll land on our back, because if we can look up, we can get up.
Absolutely.
Zach, I have a question for you. Are you big onto like reading books or listening to podcasts or audios in regards to business and sales? Was that ever a thing, or was that not really? Is there a particular book or particular speaker that maybe you listened to in the past?
So I was extremely blessed to be surrounded by not just my parents, but also business professionals my whole life.
Uh-huh.
And so when it came to books and podcasts, I really didn't lean on as much as I did real life experiences.
Sure.
So one of the most influential people in my life was a individual by the name of Nelson Savello. And he passed about a year or so ago, and I called him Uncle Nelly. And everybody actually believed that he was my uncle, because the ongoing joke was the first showing that my mother, he was a client of my parents, the first showing that she took him on, I was actually in my mother's belly, and he's like, I knew you before you were born. So he was big in regards to the finance sector and, work ethic, but also the reward aspect of things. Everybody always says, work hard, work hard, work hard. And you sit down and you put your head down and you grind and you grind and you grind. You're like, what's the reward? What's the tangible sort of, results that I'm going to be seeing? And at the end of the day, he was the one that basically showed me that everybody has a different definition of reward. Everybody has a different definition of happiness. So whatever yours is, set that goal, reach it, and then if you aren't in a position that you're, ready to not set another one and go on living with that one goal, then set another goal. Go after that. And he was one of the most influential people in my life, besides, of course, my family, my parents. And he was a person that I looked up to, but was also a big mentor factor. Him and I would golf consistently, even though I'm not good. Him and I would, talk on the phone. Him and I would go out to him and Aunt Patty, his wife, would have me over for dinner. And he had a home in Buffalo, New York, where I went to college, and they would invite me over for home cooked meals. And, we would just talk, and, whether it be about my success or my failures, he would be open to hearing both and giving advice on both. And so having those types of people and those types of role models in my life, I really didn't feel that need or desire to really dive into podcasts, to really dive into books, because I was living in one, basically.
That's amazing. I love that. Zach, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up soon, but final question. For any new sales rep getting into business and sales, rendering some type of product or service, knowing what you know now, the plethora of knowledge, what would you tell them starting off on their new journey?
I would say be fearless. That's like the biggest thing in sales a lot of people are unable to overcome, is that fear of, whether I mentioned it at the beginning, failure, whether it's fear of, oh my gosh, if I don't succeed, I'm not going to be able to, afford dinner tomorrow, whatever it may be. Like, I've been at the highest of highs and the lowest of lows to like, hey, where's my next paycheck going to come from? So being able to actually sit back, push away that fear, use it, and focus on the success, that's what I would say is the biggest thing when entering sales, when entering a new sales job, industry, whatever it may be.
Sure. Zach Shivers, thank you so much for coming on the coming on the show, coming on the podcast. You are our first guest for the second season, so that's very, very exciting. You are also our first guest in our new studio as well, where, dude, in season 1, it was $20 microphone, calling up friends and family, hey, let's do a podcast in your living room. No background, no nothing. So we here at Sky Media Ventures, as the founder, we're absolutely honored to have you come to our Boca Raton location, Ben Studio, Podcast Junkies, and really share some of the value you have. And we wouldn't have called you if we didn't recognize the greatness that you've shared to this world. So thank you, Zach, and we look forward to having you on maybe in the next season down the road.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, guys, this is the Sky Media Ventures podcast. Once again, my name is Nathaniel Carrasco. We are a marketing and media company in about 6 different states. So we are constantly growing and constantly giving value back to the public. Reach out to us on our website, or you could call us directly. Look for our phone number, and remember, sky's the limit. Take care.